Welcome to Men's Health 365, where we explore evidence-based strategies to optimize your health, vitality, and sexual function after 60. I'm your host, and today we're exposing a deadly habit that's silently destroying the blood vessels of millions of men, a habit so common, so seemingly harmless, that you probably don't even recognize it as dangerous. This single daily habit is shrinking your blood flow, damaging your arteries, increasing your risk of heart attack and stroke, causing erectile dysfunction, and stealing years from your life. The shocking part? Most men do this habit multiple times every day without a second thought, and many doctors don't emphasize how catastrophic it is for vascular health after 50. If you're a man over 50 and you want to maintain strong blood flow, healthy erections, sharp mental function, and longevity, what I'm about to reveal could save your life. Before we reveal this deadly habit, let me share Kenneth's story. At 58, this accountant from Dallas thought he was doing reasonably well health-wise. He had mild high blood pressure, controlled with medication, slightly elevated cholesterol, and was about 20 pounds overweight, but nothing he considered serious. Then he started experiencing erectile dysfunction that progressively worsened over 6 months. At first, I thought it was just stress or aging, Kenneth told me. But it got worse quickly. Within 6 months, I couldn't achieve erections firm enough for intercourse, even with Viagra. My wife and I were both frustrated and concerned. Kenneth came to see me for erectile dysfunction, but when I evaluated him comprehensively, I discovered something alarming. His brachial artery, flow-mediated dilation, a measure of endothelial function and vascular health, was severely impaired. His carotid ultrasound showed significant arterial plaque. His ankle brachial index, measuring blood flow to his legs, was abnormal. Kenneth's blood vessels were in terrible condition for a 58-year-old. As we dug deeper into his lifestyle, I identified the culprit, a daily habit Kenneth had been doing for years that was systematically destroying his vascular system. Once we identified and eliminated this habit, and implemented a comprehensive vascular repair protocol, Kenneth's transformation was remarkable. Within 3 months, his erectile function had improved substantially. Within 6 months, his vascular testing showed significant improvements. Within 1 year, his blood pressure had normalized, his cholesterol had improved, and his overall cardiovascular health had been restored. I had no idea this one habit was destroying my blood vessels, Kenneth said. I thought it was harmless. Eliminating it and repairing the damage literally saved my life. The deadly daily habit, prolonged sitting. The one daily habit that's shrinking blood flow in men over 50 is prolonged sitting, spending hours sitting without interruption, whether at a desk, in a car, on a couch, or anywhere else. This seems absurdly simple. How can something as passive as sitting be dangerous? The research is absolutely clear and terrifying. Prolonged sitting is one of the most destructive behaviors for vascular health, and its effects are particularly devastating in men over 50, whose vascular systems are already vulnerable due to age-related changes. Research published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology has documented that prolonged sitting dramatically impairs endothelial function, reduces blood flow velocity, increases arterial stiffness, promotes inflammation, and accelerates atherosclerosis. Studies show that just 3 hours of uninterrupted sitting significantly impairs vascular function, and these effects accumulate over time with chronic sitting. The term sitting disease has been coined to describe the constellation of health problems caused by sedentary behavior, and cardiovascular disease is at the top of the list. Research in circulation found that men who sit more than 6 hours per day have significantly higher rates of cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, and death compared to men who sit less than 3 hours per day, even after adjusting for exercise and other factors. The critical point is that even if you exercise regularly, prolonged sitting on top of exercise still damages your vascular system. You cannot out-exercise prolonged sitting. A study in the Annals of Internal Medicine documented that people who sit for prolonged periods have higher mortality risk regardless of their physical activity levels. Sitting is independently toxic to blood vessels. The mechanisms, how sitting destroys blood flow. Let me explain exactly how prolonged sitting shrinks blood flow and damages your vascular system. First, sitting causes dramatic reduction in blood flow velocity, particularly in the legs. When you're sitting, your leg muscles are inactive, and blood flow through your leg arteries slows to a crawl. Research using Doppler ultrasound published in the Journal of Applied Physiology has documented that blood flow velocity in the femoral artery decreases by up to 50% or more during sitting compared to standing or walking. This sluggish blood flow has several harmful effects. Slow-moving blood is more likely to form clots, increasing risk of deep vein thrombosis. Slow flow creates turbulence at arterial branch points, damaging the endothelium. Slow flow reduces the shear stress that normally signals the endothelium to produce nitric oxide, the critical molecule that keeps arteries healthy and dilated. Second, sitting impairs endothelial function acutely. The endothelium is the single-cell thick inner lining of your blood vessels, and it's critical for vascular health. Healthy endothelial cells produce nitric oxide in response to shear stress from flowing blood. Nitric oxide causes arteries to dilate, reduces inflammation, prevents clot formation, and inhibits atherosclerosis. When you sit for prolonged periods, the reduced blood flow means less shear stress, which means less nitric oxide production. Research in the American Journal of Cardiology has documented that just 1 hour of sitting significantly impairs flow-mediated dilation, a measure of endothelial function, with impairment increasing with longer sitting duration. After 3 hours of uninterrupted sitting, endothelial function can be impaired by 50% or more. This isn't just temporary. Chronic prolonged sitting causes persistent endothelial dysfunction. Third, sitting increases arterial stiffness. Your arteries should be elastic, expanding, and contracting with each heartbeat to accommodate blood flow. Arterial stiffness, where arteries become rigid and less compliant, is a major risk factor for hypertension, heart disease, and stroke. Research in hypertension has documented that sedentary behavior is strongly associated with increased arterial stiffness, independent of other risk factors. The mechanisms include reduced nitric oxide production, allowing arteries to stiffen, increased oxidative stress damaging arterial walls, and chronic low-grade inflammation promoting collagen deposition and calcification that stiffens arteries. Fourth, sitting promotes inflammation. Multiple studies have documented that prolonged sitting is associated with elevated inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. These inflammatory molecules damage endothelial cells, promote atherosclerotic plaque formation, and accelerate vascular aging. Research in diabetologia found that each additional hour of sitting per day was associated with measurable increases in inflammatory markers. Fifth, sitting impairs glucose and lipid metabolism. Even a few hours of sitting causes insulin resistance, elevated blood glucose, and increased triglycerides, all of which damage blood vessels. Research in diabetes care documented that breaking up sitting with brief activity prevents these metabolic disturbances, but uninterrupted sitting reliably impairs metabolism. Sixth, sitting reduces muscle pump activity. Your leg muscles, particularly your calf muscles, act as a pump that helps return blood from your legs back to your heart. When you're sitting motionless, this muscle pump is inactive, allowing blood to pool in your legs. This contributes to varicose veins, venous insufficiency, and reduced overall circulation. Seventh, sitting compresses blood vessels. When you sit, particularly in soft chairs or couches, the backs of your thighs compress the femoral artery and vein, mechanically reducing blood flow. Sitting also compresses pelvic blood vessels, directly impairing blood flow to the prostate and penis, contributing to erectile dysfunction. The erectile dysfunction connection. Let me explain specifically how sitting causes erectile dysfunction, because this is often the first symptom men notice. Erectile function fundamentally depends on robust blood flow through healthy, elastic arteries. When you're aroused, arteries leading to the penis must dilate dramatically, increasing blood flow up to 8-fold to fill the erectile tissue and create an erection. This requires healthy endothelial function, producing adequate nitric oxide, healthy smooth muscle in arterial walls that can relax in response to nitric oxide, and absence of atherosclerotic plaque narrowing the arteries. Prolonged sitting systematically undermines all three requirements. Research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine has documented strong correlations between sitting time and erectile dysfunction. Men who sit more than 8 hours per day have significantly higher rates of ED compared to men who sit less than 4 hours daily. The penile arteries are among the smallest in the body, typically just 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, compared to 3 to 4 millimeters for coronary arteries. This means they're exquisitely sensitive to endothelial dysfunction and atherosclerosis. Even minor impairments in endothelial function or small amounts of plaque that might not affect larger arteries can significantly impair penile blood flow. Kenneth's erectile dysfunction was the canary in the coal mine, warning that his entire vascular system was compromised by chronic sitting. Kenneth's sitting pattern. Let me describe Kenneth's typical day before we intervened, because it will likely sound familiar. Kenneth woke at 6:30 a.m., had breakfast sitting at the kitchen table for 20 minutes, then drove 45 minutes to his office sitting in his car. He arrived at his desk by 8:15 a.m., and sat working on his computer until noon with perhaps one brief bathroom break. That's nearly 4 continuous hours of sitting. He ate lunch at his desk, sitting for another 30 minutes. He worked at his desk from 12:30 p.m. until 5:30 p.m., sitting for 5 continuous hours with 1 or 2 brief breaks. He drove 45 minutes home, sitting in his car. He ate dinner, sitting at the table for 30 minutes. He spent his evening sitting on the couch, watching TV, or reading from 7 p.m. until 10:30 p.m., 3.5 hours of sitting. He went to bed. Kenneth's total sitting time, approximately 14 hours per day. His longest continuous sitting bout, 5 hours during the afternoon work session. His daily movement, walking from his car to his office, walking to the bathroom 2 or 3 times, and maybe 10 minutes of activity around the house. Kenneth exercised sporadically, going to the gym once or twice per week for 30 to 45 minutes, but he'd sit for the other 23 hours of those days, and for the entire day on the 5 or 6 days per week, he didn't exercise. Kenneth's pattern is shockingly common. Research shows that the average American office worker sits for 10 to 15 hours per day, and men over 50 often sit even more as they retire or reduce physical activity. The comprehensive solution. Let me tell you exactly what protocol I designed for Kenneth to eliminate prolonged sitting and repair his damaged vascular system. The goal wasn't just to reduce total sitting time, though that's important. The critical intervention was to eliminate prolonged uninterrupted sitting and ensure regular movement throughout the day. First, we implemented the movement break protocol. Kenneth set a timer on his phone to go off every 45 minutes during his workday. When the timer went off, he stood up and moved for at least 3 to 5 minutes. This wasn't optional, it was mandatory. The movement didn't have to be intense. He walked around his office, went to the water cooler, walked up and down stairs, did a few squats or lunges, or simply stood and shifted his weight while doing arm circles or stretches. Research published in Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise has documented that breaking up sitting with just 3 minutes of light activity every 30 to 45 minutes prevents the vascular impairment that occurs with continuous sitting. Studies using flow-mediated dilation have shown that brief activity breaks preserve endothelial function, even when total sitting time remains high. Second, we implemented a standing desk for 50% of his workday. Kenneth couldn't stand all day. That would cause other problems, including back pain and fatigue. But alternating between sitting and standing every hour prevented prolonged sitting while allowing him to continue working productively. He He stood from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m., sat from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m., stood from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m., and so on throughout the day. Third, we implemented walking meetings. When possible, Kenneth took phone calls while walking around his office or outside rather than sitting at his desk. He scheduled walking meetings with colleagues rather than sitting in conference rooms. This transformed otherwise sedentary time into active time. Fourth, we implemented an evening movement routine. Instead of sitting on the couch for 3 straight hours after dinner, Kenneth spent 30 minutes on an evening walk with his wife, watched TV while sitting on an exercise ball that required core engagement and frequent position changes, and did 10 minutes of stretching and mobility work before bed. This reduced his continuous evening sitting from 3.5 hours to fragmented shorter bouts with movement interspersed. Fifth, we addressed his commute. Kenneth couldn't avoid the 45-minute drive, but he made 2 changes. He parked at the far end of the parking lot, adding a 5-minute walk to and from his car. When stuck in traffic, he did seated exercises including pelvic floor contractions, shoulder rolls, neck stretches, and isometric contractions of various muscle groups to maintain some blood flow and muscle activation. Sixth, we implemented twice-weekly structured exercise, including cardiovascular training for 30 to 45 minutes, focusing on activities that promote blood flow, brisk walking, cycling, swimming, and resistance training to build muscle that supports metabolic health and glucose regulation. Seventh, we added daily nitric oxide boosting nutrition, including foods rich in nitrates like beets, leafy greens, and arugula that increase nitric oxide production. Foods rich in L-arginine and L-citrulline like watermelon, nuts, and legumes that are precursors to nitric oxide, and foods rich in antioxidants like berries that protect nitric oxide from degradation. Eighth, we implemented vascular supportive supplementation, including L-citrulline 3 grams daily, which converts to L-arginine and increases nitric oxide, omega-3 fish oil 2,000 milligrams EPA plus DHA daily for anti-inflammatory and vascular benefits, vitamin D optimization to support endothelial function, and magnesium 400 milligrams daily to support vascular relaxation. Kenneth's transformation. Kenneth committed fully to this protocol. The first week was challenging. The timer going off every 45 minutes felt disruptive, and standing while working felt awkward. But by week 2, the routine became automatic. He found that the movement breaks actually improved his productivity by preventing the mental fog that came with prolonged sitting. Within 2 weeks, Kenneth noticed he felt more energetic throughout the day. Within 4 weeks, he noticed improved morning erections. Within 8 weeks, his erectile function during sexual activity had improved noticeably. He could achieve firmer erections with lower doses of medication. Within 12 weeks, his vascular testing showed objective improvements. His flow-mediated dilation had improved by 40%. His blood pressure had decreased from 145/90 to 128/82 without medication changes. His inflammatory markers had decreased substantially. Within 6 months, Kenneth's erectile function had improved to the point where he could achieve satisfactory erections for intercourse with minimal medication support. His energy was dramatically better. His sleep quality improved. His mental clarity was sharper. His repeat vascular testing showed his arterial plaque had stabilized and potentially slightly regressed. His ankle brachial index had normalized, indicating improved blood flow to his legs. After 1 year, Kenneth had maintained all improvements. His total sitting time had decreased from 14 hours per day to about 7 to 8 hours, and critically, his longest continuous sitting bout had decreased from 5 hours to never more than 1 hour. His vascular age, as measured by arterial stiffness and endothelial function, had effectively reversed by about 10 years. "I feel better at 59 than I did at 55, Kenneth said. "I had no idea sitting was killing me. This simple change saved my life." Your action plan. If you're sitting for prolonged periods daily, here's your action plan. First, measure your current sitting. Track for 3 days how many hours per day you sit and what your longest continuous sitting bout is. Be honest. Most people dramatically underestimate their sitting time. Second, implement the 45-minute rule. Set a timer to go off every 45 minutes during any prolonged sitting period. When it goes off, stand up and move for at least 3 to 5 minutes. This single intervention prevents most of the vascular damage from sitting. Third, consider a standing desk or desk converter for at least 50% of your workday if you have a desk job. Alternate sitting and standing every hour. Fourth, take active breaks. Use lunch breaks, coffee breaks, and other breaks to walk rather than sit. Even 10 minutes of walking is valuable. Fifth, implement evening movement. Don't sit continuously for hours watching TV. Break it up with activity. Walk during commercials, stretch during shows, or watch while on a stationary bike or treadmill. Sixth, optimize your exercise routine. Get at least 150 minutes of moderate cardiovascular activity per week, focusing on activities that promote blood flow. Seventh, implement vascular supportive nutrition, emphasizing foods that boost nitric oxide production and reduce inflammation. Eighth, consider supplementation with L-citrulline, omega-3s, vitamin D, and magnesium to support vascular repair. Ninth, get baseline vascular testing if you're over 50 and have been sitting excessively for years. Consider carotid ultrasound to check for plaque, ankle brachial index to measure leg blood flow, and flow-mediated dilation to measure endothelial function. These tests show whether sitting has already damaged your vascular system and allow you to track improvement with intervention. 10th, address other vascular risk factors, including smoking, which is absolutely devastating to blood vessels, hypertension requiring treatment to reduce arterial damage, high cholesterol requiring management to reduce plaque formation, diabetes requiring optimal glucose control to prevent vascular damage, and chronic stress requiring management as stress hormones damage blood vessels. The one daily habit that's shrinking blood flow in men over 50 is prolonged sitting. Hours of uninterrupted sitting that impairs endothelial function, reduces blood flow velocity, increases arterial stiffness, promotes inflammation, and accelerates atherosclerosis. Most men don't recognize sitting as dangerous because it's passive and feels harmless, but the research is unequivocal. Prolonged sitting is independently toxic to your vascular system. Kenneth's story demonstrates both the devastating effects of chronic sitting and the remarkable recovery possible when this habit is eliminated and vascular repair protocols are implemented. Your blood vessels are remarkably resilient. Even significant damage can be reversed with consistent intervention. Don't wait for a heart attack, stroke, or erectile dysfunction to force you to take action. Recognize that every hour you sit, uninterrupted, is damaging your blood vessels. Stand up, move, and implement the protocol to restore healthy blood flow that will serve you for decades to come. Thank you for watching Men's Health 365. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and share.